Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming along to this morning's Charities Regulator webinar, where we will present to you the findings of the Charities Survey report. This was research recently carried out by Amárach Research on behalf of the Charities Regulator. So you'll have received a copy of the report this morning, but it's also available to download at our website, which, as you may know, is charitiesregulator.ie. So you can go on there and download a copy of the report if you want to have a further look through it after the webinar. Now, this webinar will be recorded and the recording will be made available on our website as well in the coming days. You'll also receive an email in the next day or two containing all the slides from today's presentations, and the email will also include a frequently asked questions document. This document will be populated with questions that we received today during and after the webinar. So there's a Q&A function either at the bottom or the top of your screen, depending on whether we're screen sharing or not at the time. And you can submit your questions in there. If you might feel like at the end of the presentation you have something that hasn't been covered, submit your question there, and the frequently asked questions will be addressed in a document, and that will be emailed to all attendees and made available on our website in the next day or two. We'll also keep the Q&A function live for about 15 minutes after the webinar. So if something occurs to you at the very end of the webinar, if you don't have time to submit your question while we're talking, you can do that at the end. Okay, you'll have about 15 minutes after that. Now, I'll try not to keep you any longer than an hour, so I will just let you know now who you're going to be hearing from today. In a moment, I'll hand you over to Helen Martin. Helen is the Chief Executive of the Charities Regulator. Then we'll hear from McLoughlin, Chief Executive of Amárach Research. And then we'll hear a presentation from Mandy Osbourne. Mandy is the Research Manager with the Charities Regulator. So I'll hand you over now to Helen Martin.
Thanks, Heidi, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on the results of the Charities Regulator's Irish Charity Survey. So you'll be aware that this is the second of two surveys. The fieldwork for both surveys concluded in January this year, so we're keen to get the survey results out as soon as we could. We're hoping to follow up on these surveys every 2 years, budget permitting. So the recent surveys, being the first, are particularly important in terms of establishing the picture of how things stand today in the charity sector and providing a basis for identifying trends over time. And that'll be very important in terms of the overall picture as we move into the future. So the results of the first survey were published a couple of weeks ago, and they related to a survey of the public. So from the Charities Regulator's perspective, the results demonstrated that there is still more work to do in terms of raising awareness of the Charities Regulator and encouraging members of the public to inform themselves when donating time or money to a charity by checking the Register of Charities or charity website. From the perspective of registered charities, the report provides important insight into the drivers of public trust and confidence, such as transparency and accountability when it comes to charity finances. So there's a lot there for everyone. And the full report on that survey is available on our website, charitiesregulator.ie. So I would encourage you to check that out if you haven't already. With regard to the survey of charities, which is the subject of today's webinar, we had 1,240 responses from charity trustees, volunteers, employees, and charity advisors. So the first thing I want to do is to thank those respondents for taking the time to engage with this important research. I appreciate that the survey questionnaire was not the shortest, so your perseverance is greatly appreciated, as without your willingness to complete the survey and share your experiences and those of the charities that you work with, it would be difficult for us to establish an accurate picture of where the charity sector is at today. We sent the survey invitation to over 14,000 charity and trustee email addresses. So for those of you who didn't get an opportunity to complete the survey at this time, I would urge you to consider participating the next time. The more people that respond, the richer the insights gained and the more informed we can all be in terms of our respective roles. I appreciate the timing was difficult for people because we were moving into a lockdown period, which was particularly challenging. I think we'll all agree for everybody concerned. So again, the next time, if you could, please do participate. In terms of the survey results, it was interesting to note that the detail provided by respondents on the size, income and employee numbers of their charities aligned closely with what we know from the Register of Charities. So very representative really from that perspective. While the fact that almost 4 in 10 respondents were involved with charities with less than €50,000 in income was not news to us, the survey results did highlight the particular difficulties faced by smaller, mainly volunteer-run charities that are largely reliant on donated funds from the public as opposed to, we'll say, government funding. There was an opportunity in the survey to provide feedback, and while it was great to receive positive feedback in terms of charities' experience with the Charities Regulator and its staff, and important initiatives like the Charities Governance Code, the feedback we received from respondents suggesting areas of focus, including particular types of guidance materials and subject matter that we should be focusing on, is particularly welcome. While I leave the detail of the survey results to Michael and Mandy's presentations, I want to assure you that the feedback and the recommendations provided in the free text part of the survey are being carefully scrutinised and worked through. So over the last few years, our focus was on trying to get as much guidance out there as possible to assist charity trustees, who, as you know, are the board and committee members responsible for running charities in Ireland. But we're now working on refining existing guidance and seeing what new guidance and templates we can add to our website, particularly for smaller volunteer-led charities. So finally, a word on the Charities Governance Code. It was great to see that 2/3 of respondents to the survey believed that increased regulation and the introduction of the Charities Governance Code is improving trust and confidence in the sector. The Charities Regulator has consistently said that the Governance Code is a tool to assist charities. And it is encouraging to see that to the extent that people have experience of working with the code, that experience by charities is bearing this out, that it is a tool and it is of assistance to charity trustees in particular. Based on some of the feedback received, though, it's clear that some charities are still finding it difficult to navigate the code and to record their charity's implementation of it through the compliance record form, because that's what the compliance record form is about. It's not some tick box exercise. It's to enable you to record your compliance as you move along and you go through the different standards. What I will say is we're reviewing and hoping to revise and add to the toolkit of guidance materials, templates and FAQs on the code. And we're also considering the current version of the compliance record form, looking at it through the eyes of, smaller non-complex charities and seeing what we can do with it in that regard. We're also planning to provide more examples where possible. That's something that came back, strongly in the survey. A lot of people were suggesting that, and that's something that I'm certainly in favour of, and I certainly want to see us doing more of. I always find examples, useful when I'm trying to figure something out. So we're absolutely taking that input on board. So what I would say is just to keep your eye on the website, and in particular the part dedicated to the governance code over the next few months. By way of follow-up to the survey, we also plan on working to make the significant volume of guidance that is already available on our website more easily accessible, particularly for applicants who are looking to register and anyone engaging with the Charities Regulator on behalf of a registered charity through our online portal. You took the time to engage with us on the survey, and you regularly provide valuable insight into issues your charities are encountering through your one-to-one engagement with staff. I want to assure you that we recognise the value of that feedback and the importance of reflecting that input in the work that we do and the way that we do it. So the Charities Regulator is currently developing its next 3-year strategy, and the insight gained from both surveys are going to be invaluable in terms of that exercise. So on behalf of the Charities Regulator team and our board, I would again like to thank everyone who completed the survey. And I'm going to hand you over now to Michael McLoughlin from Amárach Research, who's going to take you through the results of the Charities Regulator's recent survey of Irish charities. Thanks very much. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you, Helen. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's great to have the opportunity to talk to you this morning. So what I'm going to do is just share my screen. There, share, and that is going to, from the beginning, now. So as Helen said, we undertook both surveys. We had a team in Amárach consisting of Rob Byrne and Alison Flannery, who are on the call this morning. I'm particularly grateful to the Charities Regulator Office, and particularly Mandy Osbourne for their help. And I should also say at the outset that in my outside of Amárach, I am a charity trustee of a number of charities, so I do understand and sort of feel the reality of day-to-day this running of the sector. So if we could start off by just looking at the background to the research, as Helen has said, Charities Regulator issued a tender for market research to be undertaken on the two key stakeholder groups: yourself, the public, the general public, which, as Helen said, is published already. I'm going to refer to that in 3 slides later on, and this second this is for both stakeholder groups in December and January. And I think that was clearly a time of high pressure, but is challenging. But I think the outputs indicate some of the implications of the pandemic. Okay, so there are 2 things that you always need to think about when you're thinking of any market research project. Is the focus is often on what did you ask people. Actually, the key question is who did you ask them. So who did we ask? Just to reiterate what Helen said, the focus of the survey was the organizations regulated by the Charities Regulator, like registered charities. We excluded schools from this research program because they are not quite representative of the rest of the sector. In the terms of how we did it, how it was collected, you will remember, because most people were working remotely, we decided that the most appropriate and effective means of engaging with the sector was to use an online survey methodology. So we designed a survey and sent a link to the Charities Regulator. The Charities Regulator sent it out to respondents, and when respondents clicked on the link, they brought to a Amárach website and completed the survey. So just a couple of quick things then. So we report back aggregated findings. So the Charities Regulator has no access to any individual organization's responses. In terms of the number of responses completed, we got 1,240 completed the survey in about a month, which is, a very strong, good, robust sample. We were very pleased with that outcome. And then in terms of moving on to what we asked them. So you'll see in the report, there was 11 different sections, and you can see them there in front of you. The scale and scope of the sector, including each charity included their income and history, the challenges faced pre and post the pandemic, how the charities' activities are funded, the use of guidance and support, perceived attitudes of the public to the charity sector, and then the role of the charity, impact, and interacting with the Charities Regulator. I haven't included everything in the presentation this morning, but all the findings are in the report. So if I move on to, about the charities themselves, as Helen has said, over half the respondents were trustees. As 51% of the responses were charity trustees, 34% were employees of the charity, and 9% were charity volunteers who weren't trustees. Other than charity trustees, we asked people, does your charity have volunteers? And 71% said they had, 28% said they hadn't. In terms of does your charity currently have any paid employees? 3 out of 5, just under 6 in 10, said yes. 42% said they hadn't. Okay, but of those who had employees, on the right-hand side of your screen, you look at it, 40% had less than 5 employees, 20% between 5 and 10, and only 11% had more than 50 employees. So that's 11% of the number of organizations who had employees in the first place. So most charity organizations who responded are small, are micro organizations in the way that the CSO would describe organizations. And again, as Helen has said, there's a huge divergence of income. About 4 in 10 of those who responded had an annual income of less than 50,000 per annum, okay? And only 21% had an income of over $500,000 per annum. So again, a size and scale issue, as Helen has said, that reflects the overall pattern on the charities register. In terms of, as a consequence, it's not surprising that I think that most charities have a regional rather than a national or international footprint. And you'll see the spread of the location of services provided. 23% saying it's all over Ireland, and 10% saying it's overseas. The rest are located, in basically provincial located, like Munster at 26%, Dublin City and County at 20%, Leinster excluding Dublin City and County at 18%, and Connacht at 13%. Again, but given what we've seen about scale and resources, that's unsurprising. In terms of then how, charities are established, just under, it splits effectively in three ways. About a third less, about 29% in the last decade, about a third between 11 to 25 years ago, and a third who are older than 25 years. So again, it's a sector that's been constantly refreshed. I should have pointed out at the start, you'll see the actual question that we asked at the very bottom of every slide. In terms of then, does your charity display its registered charity number on all documentation? 60% saying yes, it's on everything, and 27% saying where possible. So again, almost 9 out of 10 saying they use it where possible. Only 7% saying they haven't included it anywhere. And again, does your charity hold charitable tax status? Almost 9 in 10 saying yes, 8% saying no, and 4% saying they don't know. And we'll come back to the use of the charitable tax status later on. In terms of, so we've seen something about the scale and shape of the individual organization. So let's move on to talking about the operation of the organization. We've asked questions, if you like, a couple of questions pre the pandemic, if you like, normal times, and then during the pandemic. So in this question, we asked the respondents to focus on the 5 issues before the pandemic that were the greatest challenge to the operations of their organization. And what I've done here on the first, we asked them to pick 5 and rank them 1 to 5. What we've done here is the first mention and all mentions. And I think it's unsurprising that the biggest challenge in both first mention and all mentions is income and securing funding, which is at 38% of first mentions and 67%, 2/3 of respondents mention it. Complying in terms of first mentions, there's a huge drop down to the next level. Complying with legislation and regulation at 7%, but mentioned by 44% of people overall. Increased running costs, rent and insurance at 7%, 43% overall, and then attracting new trustees and succession planning, 5% is the first mention, but 38% overall. And then in terms of what actions did the organizations take to resolve these top issues that you identified? And again, looking, they could select up to 3 options. So clearly 40% of people are looking for other sources of funding. Okay, at 38%. People looking to increase their profile through social media, 25%, and actively looking for new members at 18%. And then working in partnership and collaboration with other charities and nonprofits at 70%. And you'll see all the other responses and the actions that are being taken to address strategic challenges all the way down. And then we moved on to then, what are the challenges faced since the start of the pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic? And again, income and securing funding is still the big issue. The 32%, it's mentioned by 32% of respondents as their first mention, and by 56% of all charities in terms of all mentions. Then complying with particular COVID issues, complying with social distancing and other COVID-related measures such as remote working was mentioned by 8% as the first mention, but 47% of all. And again, COVID impact, the reduction of the services that we offer and unable to offer any services was mentioned by 12% of respondents, but by 46% of people overall. And the next one down at the sort of just outside the dotted bar, the cancellation or reduction in fundraising events and fundraising activities was mentioned by 11% as their first mention and by 44% overall. And how did people respond? What actions did the charity take to address these challenges that you identified? And 37% continuing to look for other sources of funding, which is the perennial challenge. Offering or hoping to offer some services in a different way was mentioned by 1/3. And again, increasing social media presence by 28% and applied for supports by 20%. In terms then of how the organization is funded, we've seen how important the challenge of income and funding is. So in the 2 years prior, again, we've asked pre the pandemic, in the 2 years prior to the pandemic, has your funding changed in the 2 years before the pandemic? And actually 83% said no, and just 15% said yes. And of the, has your main source of funding changed prior to the pandemic? 83% saying no. Has your funding increased or decreased prior to the pandemic? 37% said it had increased, 42% said it had stayed the same, and 21% said it had decreased. Has your main source of funding changed during the pandemic? 51% said no, and 47% said yes. And again, during the pandemic, has your funding increased or decreased? 54% said it had decreased, just over half, and just 16% said it had increased. 30% said it had stayed the same. And since the pandemic began, what have your main sources of funding been for your charity? And again, 48% saying it's central government or local authority grants at 48%, unsolicited donations for the public, including bequests at 22%, and donations from staff members and volunteers at 20%. And central government or local authority funding for the provision of services at 19%, which is clearly different to grants. But if you look at what we've done here is merge the two questions in terms of funding during the normal times, if you like, pre-pandemic and since the start of the pandemic. Central government, and so what you'll see is normal times is in blue and since the pandemic is in red. And I'm not going to pick out one or two of these. Central government and local authority grants have gone from 40% to 48%, mentioned by 48%. And be interesting if you look at traditional cash collections, which is about a third of the way down, has dropped from 23% to 7%. Okay, and the online collections has gone from 9% to 19%. So again, clearly, organizations trying to be flexible in how they respond to their funding challenges. I'm now going to move on to public trust and confidence. And I said at the outset that I would refer to a couple of slides that we drew from the survey of the general public. So just a general reminder of the survey of the general public happened at the same time. We had a huge sample. It was nationally representative of 2,000, okay? And I think we just need to step back. This is the first slide, is just a step back. And it just looks at, on a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is very little and 5 is very significant, how would you rate the impact of charities in Irish society? So this is the population's view of the charity sector, the impact of the charity sector. And 78% give it a score of either 4 or 5 out of 5. So, it's a significant impact. And of those demographics for significant impact on the right-hand side of your screen, strong 83% given a significant impact, 83% of females as against 74% of males, but across all the demographic groups by age, by region, and by social class, again, a very strong, consistent message. So that's the public's view of the impact of the charity sector, and we just need to keep that in our heads. And then from the public, but then moving on then, how much trust do you have in charities generally, right? Again, this is from our public study. So what we asked people to do was to rate on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 was not trust them at all, and 10 was trust them completely. So we've set a bar here of 8, 9, or 10 out of 10 is a trust. So 4 to 7 is neutral, and 1 to 3 means they don't trust. And we're really just looking at the trust score. So for charities generally, the trust score is 36, and the neutral score is 55. For small local charities, the trust score is 53, and the neutral score is 42. For national charities, the trust score is 35, and the neutral score is 54. International charities is slightly less at 23% trust, 56% neutral, and charities you personally support, which is key to, we'll see, 64% trust and 32% neutral. What is interesting, if you look across the bottom, which is the blue lines, at the blue sections at the bottom, do not trust is only, the scores for do not trust are at 9%, 5%, and national charities at 11%, international charities at 21%, and charities you personally support at 4%. So there clearly is some work to be done, but it's still a positive perspective. And again, how important, the reason we ask this, how important is trust and confidence to a charity when it comes to deciding if you're going to donate to them? And 91% of respondents in our public survey saying it's important, with 65% saying it's very important. I'm moving back now to our survey, which is the survey of charities, okay? And we asked over the last 12 months, do you think that public confidence in charities, trust and confidence in charities has increased, not changed, or decreased? So 45% of you have said that it increased, 12% said it's decreased, and 43% saying in the middle, saying it hasn't changed. So of those who said, that 45% who said it had increased, we asked them, has the increased public awareness of the role of charities during the pandemic, has that improved trust? And again, of those who said it increased, 90% said yes, it has, and only 1% said it hadn't. Of those 12% who said it had decreased, public trust had decreased, we asked why. Now, this is obviously a smaller sample because it's of the 12%. And comes back to, you know, media, the issues that emerge are media issues, coverage of issues in large, high-profile charities, ongoing public dialogue about perceived issues in the charity sector, 26%, and negative media coverage about charities generally. Okay. In terms of then, what do you think is the main factor behind the increase in public trust and confidence? 40% saying it's positive media coverage in charities generally, and 20% saying fewer negative stories about the sector, and greater 15% saying greater public awareness that charities are regulated. So the role of the media obviously is perceived to be increasingly important. In terms of what impact has that had on the increase in public trust and confidence had on your organization, on your charity, and again, we're talking to the people who said there was an increase in public trust. 44% said there was more support generally. 35% said there was no impact, no obvious impact, and 25% said there was more confidence internally within the organization, which is, I think, always an important issue. 14% said more donations or higher donations of value. But a general, you know, internal and external impacts. In terms of what are your views of, you know, come back to this media issue, what are your views about the way that registered charities are portrayed in the media? And it splits between positives at 37% and negatives at 21%, and bad top schools, which is more negative than positive, which so you can add that to a negative. So it splits pretty evenly between the two. In terms of some of the verbatim responses, I think you know, some positive portrayal of innovation initiatives, and some of the last one, they're disappointed that the focus on CEO salaries, which are a necessary part of a charity's growth and survival. Media's appetite seems to have switched to sensational reporting, unfortunately. In terms of then, what are your views on expectations of the charity sector by the general public? The highest rank expectations are about that come through in this response: governance at 28%, some sense that there's unrealistic expectations that the sector is misunderstood and there's some misinformation about it at 16%, a general thing of positive and appreciative of the public, which builds back on what we found earlier. And some of the verbatim responses: the general public rightly expect transparency and good stewardship of funds. You know, if you form a charity and advertise what you deliver, the public has a right to expect good services. And, you know, there's a view that they expect too much, especially small charities trying to provide services when funding has been cut. Moving on then to talk about the Charities Regulator. We asked them, which of the core functions do you think that the Charity Regulator is responsible for? And, you know, very high levels of response rate and understanding of what the Charities Regulator does. So we picked the top three of maintaining the publicly available registered charities, was recognized by 93% of respondents. Ensuring that charities comply with the Charities Act 2009 and regulations made under the Act was recognized by 89%, and ensuring that charities comply with the Charities Governance Code by 88%. But in all levels, in all the, you know, the vast bulk of the activities, you know, a very high level of understanding. And then, you know, we asked who's responsible between, you know, there's obviously the charities themselves, the Charities Regulator, and then equally, who's responsible for each of the following. And you'll see, you know, ensuring that a charity is well run, again, 54% saying it's the charity themselves. Ensuring that it, you know, a charity, improving public trust in the charity sector at the bottom, 30% say it's the Charities Regulator's function. What is interesting is actually the ones who believe that it's sort of a equally responsible for each of those each of those statements, it's sort of a combination of working with the sector and the regulator across. So, for example, improving public trust in the charity sector, 62% believe that the charities themselves, charitable organisations themselves, and the regulator are equally responsible. Ensuring that public has access to information about how a charity is providing a benefit to the public, again, 58% saying it's a joint effort. And ensuring that a charity operates within the law, 57% saying that it's a joint effort. We asked people a series of statements and to tick the response which more actually reflected their opinion. So effectively, they're presented with a series, we were presented with a series of statements, and you could either strongly agree, strongly disagree, disagree, agree, or strongly agree. So we presented the statements and then people tick what the response is. And in overall terms, what I just want to highlight here is, if you like, the tone of the overall responses in terms of we've separated out the neither nor is on the right-hand side. But in terms of agreement versus disagreement, you'll see much higher levels of agreement than disagreement in every case. So three things, a couple of things that were highlighted. The top three the box there, 90%, close to 90% agreement on each of the three statements. I trust the Charities Regulator to treat charities fairly and proportionally, 90%. I trust the Charities Regulator to act in the public interest when deciding whether to investigate or take legal action against charities. And I trust the Charities Regulator to make effective decisions when granting or refusing charitable status or applications for registration. Again, 89, 90% in each of those. And while you'll see that on the absence of, some of the neither nor questions are slightly higher because, may not be that people don't have a view on it, but at the top three, it's very low. In terms of, have you been in contact with the charity, or has someone from you or your organization been in touch with the Charities Regulator in the last 12 months, and why? Okay. Query about completing the annual report, online annual report at 32%, seeking information about the governance code 1 and 4, 24%, query about completing an online form other than the annual report at 16%. I think the one that actually, the finding on this slide that's most interesting is that we haven't needed to contact the Charity Regulator at 33%. Okay, and that's I think that's a challenge for both the organisation and the Office of the Regulator going forward. And then, thinking in overall terms, what's your view of the performance of the Charities Regulator? Okay, and again, a series of, people could rate it from poor, fair, good, very good, or exceptional. Okay, so again, the tone of the responses is positive. The knowledge and helpfulness of staff, the mean score is 3.8. Ease of completion of annual report, mean score of, or other online form, 3.46. Speed of response, 3.51. So again, if you look at the good versus the poor and fair, much more on the good and very good and exceptional side than the blue side, if you like. In terms of, have you visited the website of the Charities Regulator in the last 12 months? 85% said you have. 85, only 11% say that you haven't. In terms of, and again, why did you visit the website? Okay, to log into my account to file the annual report by 2/3, to look for guidance on the Charities Governance Code, again, by 3 out of 5, 58%, and to view and check your own charity in the Register of Charities at 48%, just under half. Okay. Six out of 10 found it easy to find what they needed on the the regulator's website, and almost 2/3 think it's good. So if you look, was it easy to find what you need? 3 out of 5, 60% said it was generally easy. 34% said it was okay. So that's 94%. Just 1% said they couldn't find it, and 4% said it was generally difficult. In terms of overall terms, what's the best summary? What's the statement is the best summary? What do you think of the website? 65%, 2/3 think it's a good website. 33% think it's okay, and just 2% thought it was a poor website. Again, we ask about searching the information and documentation available on the website and the My Account online system. How easy or difficult was it to find the following? And again, if you look at the red bars being easy or very easy, the gray is okay, it was okay, and the blue was either difficult or very difficult. And again, you'll find that, again, okay, easy or very easy has is coming through quite strongly. Searching the register at charities, the mean score is 44%. Guidance documents, again, 31% okay, 26% easy, and 15% very easy. Completed the annual report, 38% saying it's okay, 24% saying it's easy, and 15% saying it's very easy, okay? The Charities Government Code Compliance Record Form, 12% said it was either difficult or very difficult, which is the highest negative score, if you like, okay? And again, some of these, again, quite a high level of no opinion. Now, it may be that the person responding to the survey wasn't necessarily responsible for that level of the interaction. In terms of thinking about how the office has communicated with you in the last 12 months, how would you rate it overall? So 40% said it was either exceptional or very good, 40% said it was good. So in a sense, 80%, 4 out of 5 saying it was good, very good, or exceptional, 9% saying it was fair, and 1% saying it was poor. In question 31 was asked, how would we improve? How would the Office of Charities Regulator improve their communications with you? 38% saying that provide more model documents or templates, 28% provide more plain English explanations for legislation and legal documents, and 24% saying hold more events and training. Interestingly, I don't have any improvements to suggest was at 25%. And as Helen said earlier, they'll take, this obviously will be taken on board in how Charities Regulator looks at the future. In terms of how interested, again, would you be interested in the following, okay? In terms of, topic-specific webinars organized by the Charities Regulator to help educate and support charity. Again, high level of interest, 76%, 3/4 of people interested, are very interested. The Register of Charities do include an indication that a charity trustee of a charity is also a trustee of another charity. Again, a majority at just over 3 out of 5, 61% saying yes, they would be interested. And the Charities Regulator to be represented at more charities events when the world presumably reopens at 56%, again, a majority. So then our final section is looking at being a registered charity, the Register of Charities, and the Charities Governance Code. So I said we'd come back to this. So 6 out of, from our first section, 6 out of 10 feel their status as a registered charity is either very or fairly important. So 59% saying it's either, as I say, very important or fairly important. 38% saying it's unimportant, with 34% saying it's very unimportant. In terms of what do you think is the greatest benefit of being a registered charity? And 57% saying, well ahead, a higher credibility and trust, and which is then like the second is 18% being able to obtain and maintain a charitable tax status, and increased access to funding streams at 16%. In terms of what's the drawback of being a registered charity, 26% saying there's extra paperwork and record keeping required. 12% saying it's complying with charity legislation and requirements of the Charities Regulator. Okay, but the one again that stands out in this slide is that 39% of respondents said there's no obvious drawbacks of being a registered charity. And again, we gave people the opportunity to do you think the work of your organization is hindered by the following because it's a registered charity? And we gave them a series of things that people have mentioned in the past, time and staff costs, on administration to maintain charitable status. And people could either tick greatly hindered, somewhat hindered, and no obvious hindered. And what is striking here is that no obvious hindrance is stronger in all, as against hindered or somewhat hindered in every category. And in that greatly hindered, the highest is additional professional costs and accountancy, or audit accountancy or solicitor's fees, mentioned by 11%, but no obvious hindrance in that case is mentioned by 51%. And again, if you step back, what impact has having charitable status had on your organization? 85% saying it has benefited them, okay, and 58% saying it's benefited a lot. And again, if you look at hindered a lot, it's only at 2%. are hindered a little at 2%, hindered a lot at 0%, and don't know 3%. So huge endorsement of charitable status for their organizations. If you imagine the Charities Regulator didn't exist, in your opinion, what difference would this make to the charity sector overall? Okay, 80% of you said that charities would be less transparent and publicly accountable. 59% said public trust and confidence in charities would be lower, and 46% saying there'd be more bogus charities and more scams. So clearly, the importance of transparency and accountability coming through. Are people aware of the Charities Governance Code? Again, phenomenal. 96% saying absolutely yes, and of those 96%, 85% say does the Charities Governance Code assist their charity? Okay, and only 15% of those who are aware of it say no. In terms of then some greater transparency, we asked, would you like to see the financial statements of charities that are not companies made available on the Registered Charities website? Okay, 57%, a majority is saying yes, and 9% saying no, and 34% saying no opinion. So in effect, 6 times as many are saying yes as no. And I think all charities should have to publish unabridged financial statements. Again, significant majority, 61% saying yes, 3 out of 5 saying yes, 1 in 5 saying no, and 21% don't know. But again, the number, if you exclude the don't knows, the yes versus no is very high. And then we asked people to rank a series of statements about how the charity regulator operates. And we, in terms of what do you think should be the order of importance? And so you'll see on the slides here, we've ranked them 1 to 5 in terms of most important to the least important. So the one that, the most important comes through at one, the Charities Regulator maintains a register of charities operating in Ireland, which is available to the public free online. 53% of you said that was the most important. The Register of Charities includes information about the finances and activities of each registered charities and list of trustees, 16%. Charities Regulator runs briefing seminars and training for charity trustees regularly and free of charge, and published guidance for charities at 12%. And the Charities Regulator doesn't charge charities fees for any of its services, such as filing an annual report or amending trustee details at 10%. And the Charities Regulator telling the public when it's appointed inspectors to investigate a charity and was taking legal action against a charity, number 1 mentioned at 9%. So, but the importance of again, information about the sector and the charity, available free to the public online comes through again. And coming back then to, how important is it being a registered charity benefit your organization? In some ways, this is in a sense summary of much of what we've talked about earlier this morning. So in terms of, we asked people to say whether it was beneficial, very beneficial, somewhat beneficial, or no obvious benefit. So 70% saying being recognized as a registered charity is very beneficial. 62% saying increased public trust from being a registered charity is very beneficial. And that's, if you include somewhat beneficial, we're at 90%. Being able to seek support and guidance from the Charities Regulator at 48%, very beneficial. Being able to benefit from charitable tax status at 58%. Being an organization which is regulated by a state body at 50%, very beneficial. And some of the ones that are lower at the bottom, being available to avail of lower bank charges or discounts on fees and services at 31%. But again, if you look at the blue versus red, if you look at the beneficial versus the no obvious benefit, it's clearly the benefits completely outweigh the numbers who think there's no obvious benefit. So if I look at insights and implications, and in fact, this is my concluding slide. If you look at the sector, okay, it is one of the most vibrant sectors in Irish society. It is refreshed constantly by new organizations, and the range and scale of activities undertaken by charities, if you like, underline a continuous appetite for societal impact and change. And I think the fact that there's so many new organizations every year is evidence of social entrepreneurship and engagement. And if you go back then also to the impact of what the public perceives as impact, the impact of the sector on society, again, that's a strong endorsement. Many of the organisations, I think, may remain small. And as the regulatory environment changes, it's critical for the success of trust in the sector that charities, trustees and their organisations are equipped with the knowledge and skill set to run their organisations effectively, efficiently and well, and to the standard that the public expects. I think the constant challenge for the sector, regardless of your organisation size, is funding and income. And the pandemic has clearly disrupted many organisations' traditional income patterns. It will also clearly have disrupted activity, volunteering, and the way that the organisations operate. And when the pandemic ends, and hopefully it will end shortly, we're coming to the end of this pandemic. I think many organisations will be challenged by the new context in which they operate. And those who, maybe you depend on purely voluntary activity may be impacted by the impact of the pandemic on their volunteer cohort. And given that many organisations are what I would call micro-organisations, consideration has to be given to the practical support that they need as they enter the post-COVID world, okay? I think through various elements of this report, there's a clear desire for building governance and transparency within registered charities. And in response to a series of questions asked in different ways, charities understand the role of governance and accountability in reinforcing trust, confidence and understanding. I think they also do understand the work of the Charities Regulator in its various forms and formats. They believe that charities benefit from this regulatory framework and see that the Charities Regulator is making a material difference as how they operate and how the sector is trusted. I think a key challenge will clearly be to maintain governance momentum across all charities, regardless of their size and scale. Almost 4 times as many charities believe that trust in the sector is increasing, as against those who believe that trust is decreasing. And I think the role of governance in trust arguably underpins their overall appetite for governance. And the belief that good governance underpins rising levels of public trust and confidence, I think, is the fundamental finding of this survey. I've presented you with a huge amount of information. There's nothing that I've presented today that isn't in the report. As Helen has said, research is only as good as the people who take the time to respond to it. So on my own behalf and on behalf of my team, can I thank you for your participation in the exercise and your listening this morning. And can I now hand you over to Mandy Osbourne, who is going to take you through some other findings and as a wrap up. Okay, thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear and see me there clearly. I'm just going to introduce myself. First of all, my name is, from before, is Mandy Osbourne, and I'm the research manager with the Charities Regulator. Some of you may be familiar with me from my previous life and other roles within the regulator, in registration team in particular. Particularly some of the newer charities may be familiar with me from there. So I'm just going to share my screen with you all, and today I'm going to go through I suppose some of the main takeaways for both charities and the regulator from the survey. A lot of what I'm going to talk about has been touched on by both Helen and Michael, so hopefully I won't bore you too much with my findings. So firstly, I suppose, as a regulator, we were very encouraged about the levels of support that came through in the survey, and also that charities very much recognise the benefits of regulation as well. So, I mean, there you can see some stats there that Michael has, 85% thought that the governance code was assisting in the running of their charity. 80% feel that there would be less transparency and public accountability without the Charities Regulator. We're also encouraged that charities trust us as a regulator to treat charities fairly and proportionately and to act in the public interest. And also that the majority of charities believe that we do our best to keep the regulatory and administrative burden on charities to a minimum. We are also obviously pleased that charities gave us good ratings for the knowledge and experience of our staff, our query response times, our website and our communications overall. But I suppose the flip side to that is that it's also clear that we still have significant work to do, because there's so much in the surveys which we all can learn from, and much, of course, which we've yet to fully consider, particularly in the current climate with coming out of COVID and all the challenges that has given us. I'm just really going to focus on one aspect of the findings today, and I suppose arguably you could say it's the most important, and that is public trust and confidence. So I think 91% of the public there thought that trust and confidence in charity is important or very important. And 36% of the survey and the public respondents in the public survey thought they had a high level of trust in charities, rating it an 8, 9 or 10 out of 10. So that's a really high level of trust amongst, albeit a small cohort. A further 55% had some level of trust and confidence. But I think what's of interest really when you look at the two surveys compared together is that charities believe that public trust has increased much more than it has, and that it has decreased much less than it has too. And I think that's an interesting finding. There's also a clear divergence in the views between larger and smaller charities. 56% of large charities, that's those with an annual income of more than $500,000, believe that public trust has increased. And just 32% of smaller charities, that's those with an income of less than $50,000 per annum, believe it has increased. And 7% of large charities compared to 15% of small charities believe trust to have decreased. So more than double the number of small charities believe trust has decreased with the public. It also seems clear that the views of smaller charities on trust and confidence are more in line with what the public believe based on the findings in our public survey. And I suppose that really tells us that smaller charities are more likely to be reliant on donations directly from the public, and therefore they're more impacted directly by public levels of trust and confidence. And they're also probably closer to their donors and their beneficiaries, maybe even knowing many of them personally. So they're getting their feedback directly and therefore more in touch with the public's feelings about charities. But the top reasons, I suppose, cited by both the public and charities for the decrease in trust and confidence, all directly or indirectly can be linked back to issues about transparency and accountability. And Michael touched on these. Public respondents who said that trust and confidence had decreased indicated the main reasons as being reports about CEO salaries, lack of confidence that the money is going where it's meant to, and concerns that too much money is being spent on administration. And charities then, who thought that trust and confidence decreased, said main reasons are media coverage of serious issues, ongoing public dialogue about perceived issues, and negative media coverage generally. So to explore this a little further, we asked the public to tell us what they thought would increase their trust and confidence in a charity. And again, the main drivers all come back to transparency and accountability. 9 out of 10 public respondents said that knowing what % of their donation actually went to the cause would greatly increase their trust and confidence in a charity. With 69, that's 7 out of 10 said it would greatly increase their trust and confidence. Similarly, confidence would increase from 9 out of 10 if they saw evidence of what the charity had achieved. Transparency across various aspects of financial administration and knowing that a charity is well run by having information about the charity's governance code would increase confidence for more than 80% of the public respondents in the public survey. And when we asked the public what concerned them most about charities, 92% said they were concerned about the lack of openness and transparency and about how donations were used. This was their highest rated concern. And this perceived lack of transparency filtered into other concerns too. 81% of the public indicated that they were concerned that regulation was not having any effect. And when we probed further and asked them to tell us in their own words why they thought that regulation wasn't having any effect, the top response was that there was a lack of transparency around finances and that the provision of more financial information would help address this. This difference of opinion between the public and charities is also apparent when we asked charities for their views on the operations of the Charities Regulator. That the Register of Charities should show more detailed financial information about the charity was the statement that respondent charities selected least when asked to tick which statement accurately reflected their opinion. Yet when the public was asked to rank 5 statements in order of importance in relation to how the Charities Regulator should operate, that the Register of Charity includes information on the finances and activities of each registered charity, and a list of charity trustees came out as the most important, along with publishing and maintaining the online register of charities. So this is significant when it comes to the issue of trying to increase trust and confidence, as 84% of public respondents said having more information on the charity's accounts and financial transactions would greatly increase or somewhat increase their trust in a charity. So to look at this in a little bit more depth, we also asked charities the same question. Who do you think is or should be responsible for? And we give them a number of statements. I've only picked out the few here that are most relevant to trust and confidence. And you can see there that there's a marked difference of opinion. I have a couple of slides here on this. For example, ensuring that a charity is transparent and accountable. Charities, 41% of charities said the charity themselves is responsible, but the public said that the charity was only 25% responsible, and the regulator was much more responsible for ensuring that a charity is transparent and accountable. But I think really when you look at these, what I suppose is important is that the majority of people in all cases said that there was an equal responsibility. And therefore, this neither the sector, as the charity sector itself, nor the Charities Regulator can address many of the issues faced by the sector. And this is absolutely evidenced by these findings. We have a total shared responsibility. But the survey findings also clearly demonstrate that charities themselves can help improve trust and confidence. And this is what the public expects. As transparency and accountability has been identified as the main driver of trust and confidence, our message as a regulator to charities is to publish as much information as you can yourselves, be that on your websites, through social media, or via newsletters or other communications. We really acknowledge and appreciate that many charities already do this, but we would encourage all charities to follow suit. If all charities had a policy of being open and transparent, then this would impact positively on the sector as a whole. By way of example, and to demonstrate how charities can be more transparent, the Register of Charities contains an annual summary of the finances and activities of all registered charities, but currently charities are not required to actually submit their financial accounts to the regulator. Therefore, a charity's accounts will only be accessible on the Register of Charities if the charity is a company and the accounts are filed with the company's registration office. Since around 35% of charities are not companies, unless charities are publishing their accounts themselves, the public cannot access this key information. Now, we plan to address this anomaly between charities which are companies and those which are unincorporated by way of an amendment to the Charities Act. But in the meantime, we would really encourage charities to publish their accounts themselves. I'd also add here, and this to reiterate a point made earlier, that the accounts should not be abridged. Abridged accounts by their very nature do not demonstrate a high level of transparency or accountability. Charities are also encouraged to publish their governing document and information on any other internal procedures they have in place. Any charities with employees should also consider publishing the relevant salary scales which apply if this is possible. But also to say that transparency and accountability is not all about finances. We'd reiterate the importance of a charity telling its story. And what we mean by the story is why the charity was set up in the first place, how it is working to achieve its charitable purpose, what it has already achieved, how it spends the money it receives, and how it is benefiting the public. Charities need to be able to demonstrate how their charity makes a difference and how the donations or funding it receives are being used. It is only by understanding a charity's purpose and seeing evidence of what it has achieved and the benefits that is given to the public that donors can make an informed decision. We also encourage charities to publish a short biography of each of their charity trustees, who they are and what skills and experience they bring to the charity. Make it more than just a name. And finally, don't underestimate the importance of having a good website. While social media use is on the rise, the charity's website was the most popular go-to for the public when seeking information about a charity. I'm just going to finish off now with a few more takeaways for the regulator and for charities. The first one there is improving public awareness of the registered charities and the registered charity number. 23% of public respondents said they do not check out a charity at all before supporting it. That's almost 1 in 4 people in the population who just give their money or their time without, or their used goods or whatever it may be, without even checking if the organisation is a charity. And 12% admitted they didn't even know what a registered charity number is. So clearly raising awareness of what it means to be registered and therefore a regulated charity, the importance of the registered charity number and the maintenance of the free online register of charities remain a key focus of the regulator. At the end of the day, the message to the public is a simple one. They must do their research before they donate by checking that the charity has a registered charity number and looking it up on the free online register of charities. And I think all of us, regulator and the charity sector as a whole, should increase our efforts to get this message across to the public. There's also evidence in the surveys that public awareness of the regulator and its remit is increasing. Yet 81% of respondents said they were concerned that regulation was not having any effect. So clearly we still have work to do. Our commitment to improving the accountability of charities through monitoring compliance with the Charities Governance Code along with the proposed amendments to the Charities Act and the introduction of accounting regulations which will follow, will hopefully go some way to improving the view that regulation is not having any effect. But it is only with the ongoing support and cooperation of registered charities that we can achieve this. Acting on concerns raised and issuing public notices when we appoint inspectors to investigate charity, along with taking legal action where relevant and appropriate, will over time raise awareness of the role of the Charities Regulator in policing the sector. And the lessons learned from our regulatory activity will help all charities and ourselves too to do things much better. Finally, at various points throughout the survey, we asked charities what we could do better. And I have to say, charities didn't hold back in giving us suggestions. So thank you to all of you. The range of improvements was many and varied, but a number of key trends emerged, and both Helen and Michael have touched on these. The main ones being requests to simplify the Charities Governance Code compliance record form, particularly for smaller, less complex charities. The need for more guidance, more template documents, and more training videos and webinars were all came forward in the suggestions. So as Helen said, we're going to take all of these on board, and over the coming months, we'll be working on improving some of those and providing new ones. So I'm just going to say thanks very much to everyone for your time, and I'm going to pass you back now to Heidi. All the H's confusing me here, for some closing comments. So thank you.
Thanks, Mandy. So thank you to everyone for joining us this morning.